Kia ora koutou, kua hui mai nei I tēnei pō, ko Bruce Hamill aho. I'd like to begin tonight with a thought experiment. Let's imagine for a moment that Jesus of Nazareth was born in Bethlehem, performed the kind of miracles we read in the Gospels, taught the kind of teachings that he taught in the Gospels. But at the point in his life when he decided to turn his face to Jerusalem, he decided and said that his destiny lay with the lepers outside of the city, living in the dust by the road in the ghettos, abandoned and untouchable. That he went and lived with those lepers, that he died, contracted leprosy, and died a slow and painful death. He gave his life knowing he would probably die. He died of natural causes, and 3 days later God raised him from death. Now it's a thought experiment. It didn't happen. But it's the kind of thing I think that Jesus of Nazareth would have done. But if he had done it, here's the question. What difference would that make to your faith? Would you still have faith? Would there even be such a thing as the Christian faith? Now many of you will say yes, but I want to push back against that for a minute because I think that at the centre of the Christian faith is a clash between what we might call world and God. And the world, at least contrary to appearances, lost out, and something new was born to supplant it. Tonight I want to talk about the relationship between the crucifixion and the death and the world. The crucifixion of Jesus and the world. I want to try and show how the crucifixion of Jesus makes a difference, or might make a difference, to the world. Many think that it makes a difference to the afterlife, but I'm interested in the world. Now clearly I'm not meaning by the world the whole of God's creation. I have no idea how the crucifixion of Jesus might make a difference to life on other planets or photosynthesis. I'm talking about the human world, the social world, and a particular aspect of it. Perhaps you're thinking, what do you mean by the world? Surely there are many worlds, you know, the American world, the New Zealand world, the corporate world, the LGBT world, and so on. It's a good challenge. If we're going to talk about how the crucifixion of Jesus makes a difference to the world, we need to say something about what's universally human. A Jesus who makes a difference to things Roman and things Jewish, but doesn't make a difference to things Maori or things Papuan, is hardly going to be the kind of Jesus who matters to all of us. As Christians then, we believe that this man who talked about the God difference was vindicated by God and achieved his mission. The question is how, and how did his brutal death contribute to that, as opposed to, say, a death by leprosy? Well, let's begin. A guy called René Girard articulated what I think is a missing link in our understanding of the crucifixion of Jesus. Let me give you a brief summary of his thought. Girard says that the distinctive thing about the human brain is its enormous copying power. We process the world consciously, but before that even happens, we're already receiving information. Our mirror neurons are firing. We are imitating our environment, especially our human environment. So we do process the world consciously, but undergirding all of that is an unconscious process of imitating our neighbours. And Girard notices, before even the neurologists can demonstrate this, that this goes deeper than copying the things others do, like when you learn a skill. It goes close to our identity as human beings. We want what others want. We get our desires from our neighbours. Or to use a biblical term, we covet according to our neighbours. This is enormous. It suggests that we're a lot less individual than we think we are. But I want to take that in another direction, as Girard does. Imagine for a moment a group of children in a room full of toys. There's no scarcity, at least in theory. Before long, what happens? The children want what other children want. Inevitably, if the adults aren't exercising some control, there's conflict. The problem of having a big imitating brain is the problem of human violence. And what does that mean over the long-term history of humanity and of human evolution? It means that this imitating process means the violence will spread, will escalate, will be contagious. Either the human race learns to control violence or it dies out. So Gerard notices something else. We may tend to be rivals, but from time to time we are united all against one. From time to time we find scapegoats. A finger is pointed, the gesture is imitated, and suddenly there is peace. One is sacrificed for the peace of all. We use violence to control violence. And it seems such a mysterious transformation to our ancestors that they reenacted sacrificial ritual again and again, not necessarily with human beings, and again. So Gerard asks, why is sacrificial religion so basic, so fundamental to the ancient world, more so even than commerce and agriculture? Because it deals with the fundamental issue of human survival and of human violence. The problem of violence is solved by a society structured by violence. So here's the idea. The world is violent. We build a society around our scapegoats, whether they be Jews or witches or gays or beneficiaries or African Americans, or even merely the kid in the playground with a speech impediment. This is something human across all cultures. And when René Girard looks up from his study of ancient anthropology and from his literary study of Proust and Shakespeare, he sees that at the centre of Western history and of our faith is a classic scapegoat. A lynching mob finds its unity in casting out someone who's different. At the centre of our faith is the epitome of violence, not the epitome, not just of murder, but of this social structuring process, a group united by its enemy and its victim. So that's René Girard in a nutshell. A few years ago, I was involved in writing a new creed for the Presbyterian Church, and I was very keen to include the phrase, "He died of our violence," to describe the crucifixion. It was the most controversial line in the creed. It got thrown out very quickly. And there were two main objections. One was, it's true, but it's merely incidental to explaining the crucifixion of Jesus. The other was, well, the problem is it reflects too poorly on us as human beings. Those are quite interesting objections, aren't they? On the one hand, something more important is going on in the crucifixion than addressing the violence of the world and creating a new world. And on the other hand, the world has problems, but they're not that bad, nothing that we can't solve with education and a little bit of encouragement. But in raising Jesus, God paints for us a much darker picture. The resurrection of Jesus is both an action of God and a word, a communicative act. God speaks to us in the voice of our victim. God says, "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. I am in prison. I am hungry. I am naked." God says to us, "You are crucifiers." God speaks to us a word that we cannot tell ourselves. "You are world, and I am creating a new world, a new creation." This is a revolutionary word. A word with all the drama associated with that word revolution, and none of the violence. This is a word that the Spirit takes a lifetime to teach us to hear. So finally, in conclusion, let's go back to that thought experiment of the Jesus who died of leprosy. If we were to think of this as salvation of some kind, salvation by other means, Perhaps this could be construed by some strange algorithm as a payment of God to appease God's sense of justice. Perhaps by balancing the cosmic account book, or by transferring punishment onto some innocent victim. This is not merely some strange, very strange algorithm. It misses the whole point, or the key point, of the crucifixion. The most important thing about the crucifixion is the taking away of sin, and not merely the pardoning of it. You see, what the thought experiment does is that it reminds us that the crucifixion of Jesus doesn't just tell us about the beauty of God's life among us, the culmination of this life of compassion. It also tells us about evil. Evil is not something that we are free to fantasize about according to the monsters of our imagination. Evil is exposed in the crucifixion of Jesus, and it has a particular social form. It is known as it is undone. Satan scapegoats God, and God raises Jesus at the center of a new world. This is the kingdom that is good news for the world. So what we traditionally call salvation then is primarily about peacemaking. We undergo the peacemaking of God, and we can participate in the peacemaking of God in the midst of a violent world. Thanks for listening.